Welcome to episode 9 of Happy Hour Live. I'm Eddie Meneses, your host, and today is Friday, May 15th, 2020. Friday's kind of becoming the new Monday for me. It's kind of the start of my week. It's the only day I shave. It's the only day I really do my hair. It's the only day I make sure to put on clean clothes because I'm preparing for this interview. So it's kind of the only way I'm tracking time right now for the past 9 weeks. But excited to be here. Glad to see people here. What did we do this week? This week, my wife and I got COVID tests. We got tested for COVID-19. It's open to all residents in LA County. And it's pretty easy. You just make an appointment. It's a drive-up facility. We waited like 15 minutes in a line of cars. We go up to one place. They like confirm your appointment. They scan a test. They scan your name to link it all together, give it to you, and they send you on to another station where someone kind of guides you through the test. And all you do is cough 3 times into your arm, take a swab, put it all over, like swab your mouth for about 20 seconds, and then put it in a vial, and then put it in a bin, and you're done. And we are probably going to hear about our results today or tomorrow. But if you are living in LA County or any county that has free testing for anybody, get to it. Just, do it. Do yourself a service. Find out I don't know if the antibody tests are ready or not, but find out if you're asymptomatic and you have if you have it or not. That's probably going to put you at ease, I think, to know that you don't have it. Pro tip, they do these appointments in hour-long slots. Show up like 15 minutes from your hour, and you won't wait as long. But we got there about 15 minutes early, like any good musician, right? And then we got to do the test, and at the end of the test, the line was like over an hour long for the 4 o'clock appointment. So get there a little bit early. So that was good. Some sad news, the LA Phil officially canceled their Hollywood Bowl season, which is incredibly sad for me. That is my favorite time of year. Not only is the Hollywood Bowl my favorite venue in Los Angeles, it is my busiest time of the year. Playing in the summer, it's like the Hollywood Bowl becomes my second home. It's the most rewarding time of year. I'm playing great rep, playing soundtracks to some of my favorite movies to sold out crowds of 17,000 people a night. It's really incredible. And then my favorite is the Labor Day concert, which is the John Williams Spectacular with John Williams conducting. It is typically the highlight of my year, and that is not going to happen this year. And that is so incredibly sad for me, but I understand why the decision was made. It'll happen next year. It's just so sad that it happened now, but, we move on, and whatever, the show goes on. Speaking of the show, let's move on with the show. Please like, comment, share on this. It's really been amazing to see this grow week after week. New faces, new names, new people watching, new interactions. So please like and comment. Love to see your name. Just say hi. And at any time during this discussion, if you have a comment or a question, just put it up there. We will get to it at some point during the discussion. I love interaction with the audience. It's so crucial to kind of drive this conversation. It's really great. I think some of you are commenting. I'm not seeing it pop up. It's something with my software, but I'll figure that out, and we'll get to it. Guys, we already got 20 people watching. Thank you, everyone who's tuning in. I'm going to, really quick, see if I can tune in to my live stream on my phone. Oh, there we go. Jamie Morales, thanks, dude. Diana, thanks for checking in. Dave Gerhardt, thanks for checking in. Awesome. Everyone, please comment, share, especially share. If you could just please take 1 second and share this video live to your profile, that would be awesome. It helps spread the word, trying to grow this kind of organically. Obviously, I don't have sponsors. I'm just kind of doing this on my own time. But if you could help me out by clicking that share button, that would be awesome. Like, comment, share. Thanks. Brandon Shantz, what's up, man? Love having you back. Covey, what's up? My best man, one of my best friends in the world, Covey. Sharon Chada, so good to hear from you. I'm glad to see your name. Jeff Grant, Jeff and Kat are watching. Kat is a flute player. I'm sure I know why she's watching. Jason Sudduth, Erica's husband. This is great. Peter Schlur. Hey. So, yes. So my guest today is another really inspiring story of career success. She went to the University of Miami, undergrad, studied flute, and then moved to California and studied with the professor at the University of California in Santa Barbara, but didn't actually go there for a degree. Just studied with the teacher, and then got in the debut orchestra, which is kind of a training orchestra here, but a lot of us do here in LA. And then straight from that, she wins Honolulu Symphony, assistant principal in Piccolo. She didn't do Tanglewood. She didn't do Music Academy. She didn't do New World Symphony. She didn't do any of those things that we all keep telling ourselves we have to do in order to be worthy of a great career as an orchestral musician. She bypassed all of that. I think, like, just deep inside her, she knew she was a rock star and she was going to go out and get it. So she gets Honolulu. From there, she meets her husband in Honolulu, Jason Sudduth. He's a oboe player and English horn player. Jason wins a job in the Omaha Symphony, and they move out there. And while they're out there, Erica wins a job in the Omaha Symphony. So they're in this orchestra together, and they decide to start a family. They have a daughter, a beautiful daughter named Avery. And when she was about 2 or 3, raising a 2-year-old and having a busy life and a busy family life, Erica wins the 3rd flute piccolo job in the San Diego Symphony. And that's already amazing. That's a great job. A great city, great people in that orchestra, awesome place to live, amazing community. You can have a nice little career there. But then just, 2 short years later, now with a 5-year-old in tow, she prepares for and wins one of the biggest jobs in one of the most famous orchestras in the world. She wins the flute and piccolo position in the Philadelphia Orchestra. I mean, this is such an inspirational story. And on top, not only that, she is an incredibly well-rounded and down-to-earth and amazing person. So she's a good friend of mine, major source of inspiration for me. I'm nervous just thinking about talking to her. It is my absolute pleasure to bring you the one, the only, the woman, the myth, the legend, and silver-haired queen, Erica Peel. Erica, welcome to the show.
What's up?
Hey, what is up?
You're embarrassing me.
Thank you so much for being here.
Oh man, thank you for having me, and thank you
Of
for that
course.
incredible introduction. When you say it all like that, I'm like, whose life was that again?
It was
Definitely not
yours,
mine.
man. You killed
It's
it. I
awesome
remember
to see you and
Yeah.
to hang out with you because it's been far too long. So
it has been a long time. But yeah, it's so great to see
Yeah.
your face. It's like really quickly, I remember like previously, I think probably a lot of musicians feel this way, but my mentality for sure was like, okay, you win a big job and then you start a family. Like not start a family and then win a big job. And I didn't even think it was possible until I met you. And I think the first time we hung out, like Diana and I hung out with you and Jason at your apartment in San Diego and saw Avery and saw like how well you and Jason
I remember
communicated,
this.
how
Yeah.
amazing like, you guys were with Avery and how like well behaved and joyful she was and playful. I was like, oh, this is the first time in my life where I'm like, yeah, I totally want to start a family now. Like I had never felt that until I hung out with you guys. So I just wanted to share that briefly.
Aw, that's so
That was
sweet.
a
I
great-
remember that visit
moment.
also, and I remember I think Diana was like coloring with Avery on the floor or something,
Yeah.
and it was
Yeah.
it was like you guys were having a moment for sure.
Yeah. And you poured me like this much whiskey in a glass.
like this much.
like that much. Yeah.
Cheers, by the way.
Cheers.
Happy hour.
Cheers. Yeah. It was a good night. It was a fun time. Okay. So I guess the big question is, so you became a piccolo player, but you never formally studied piccolo in school. So I think my first
Yeah.
question is, how did you decide that you were going to just start playing piccolo? And not only that, you were going to be amazing at it, and your goal was to have this incredible career or just like win a big job someday as a piccolo player.
Well, there's a lot of questions in that one question that you just
Yeah.
asked.
Sorry.
But I would say that the piccolo and I have had a very interesting relationship. It was definitely not my first love, not something that I wanted to do until much later in my career. I consider myself, or did consider myself, a flutist first. You know, we go to school and we study the flute. There's no undergrad programs where you go to study the piccolo specifically. So I considered myself a flutist first, and actually thought that the piccolo was sort of evil, which I know many flute players can agree with. But I distinctly remember one of my early teachers, Marianne Archer, who played piccolo in the Met when I was in high school. And she advised me that proficiency on the piccolo was often the thing that clinched a job. And so she, kind of forced me to learn it to a certain degree, but I don't think that really sunk in until much later on. But I never forgot that advice. So my first job with the Honolulu Symphony was assistant principal in piccolo, but I actually played mostly principal.
Mm-hmm.
Um, During my time there, I played very little piccolo, and when I did, it was a terrifying experience. I didn't feel comfortable being heard all the time. It's just not my jam, and that's what you do when you play the piccolo. You're heard all the
All the
time.
time. Can't not hear you.
Yeah, it's kind of awful in that way. So I kind of had a moment of reckoning there. Like, is this really what I want to be doing? Like, is this the job that I want? Because I'm just constantly terrified playing it. So I started listening to other great orchestral piccolo players, which up until that point I had been listening mostly to flute players, orchestral flute players. That was my model. So I started listening to piccolo players and realized that playing piccolo with fear is like the absolute worst thing that you could possibly do.
Yeah.
And so I sort of began a very slow journey at that point to dedicate myself to actually learning the instrument. It really is a very different instrument than the flute. There are, of course, similarities, but I think it needs to be approached as its own instrument and given the same amount of time that I gave the flute as I began learning that instrument. So, I stopped seeing it as a painful extension of the flute and started actually dedicating some time to it. In the years that followed, even though I wasn't really sure that I wanted to take piccolo auditions and play piccolo, I started to find more success in piccolo auditions. Like, that was where I was doing well. I seemed to stand out in those auditions as opposed to in the sea of flute players at those auditions. So a turning point for me was when I got the job in the Omaha Symphony that my husband was playing in. And that orchestra was incredibly supportive. I had a lot of friends in the orchestra who encouraged me to experience growth in a very safe environment. So I didn't feel threatened. I didn't feel like if I screwed up, I was going to be judged for it. It felt safe and I could take risks and learn more about playing the piccolo in an orchestra there. So that was sort of a pivotal time for me. My 4 year, I think it was 4 years that I played in Omaha, and I started to believe in myself a little bit more. And interestingly, it was just right after I had Avery that I took an audition with the St. Louis Symphony, and I ended up in the super finals there. And that was a moment where I was like, shit, like St. Louis is a big deal. And being in the super finals, it was kind of like a moment, a come to Jesus moment. Like, maybe this is exactly what I should be doing. And that was a major boost of confidence for me in figuring out it, both in realizing that I was on the right track to figuring out the instrument and that I could potentially do well in auditions. You said something in the intro about, I don't know if it was like I always knew I was destined for a big job. That's actually, I didn't. I was sort of resigned in Omaha that we would probably end up there. And we were both playing in the same orchestra, and it's kind of, that doesn't happen. You don't end up in the same orchestra as your spouse often. And so I felt like that was a great opportunity for us to continue to make music together forever. And I ended up finding a lot of other outlets for myself to be really fulfilled, because the piccolo job was just a per service job in Omaha. Jason's was a full-time second oboe job, and mine was just per service. So I had a lot of other musical outlets that I was exploring and finding other ways to fulfill myself musically. And so I don't think that we can get more into this later. And you kind of touched on it last week a little bit too, about like the victim mentality, but I've always felt that I've had the innate ability to just be grateful for where I was. And be very appreciative of that. And sure, still have the drive to want to better myself always. But to just accept the fact that if we end up here forever, I'm going to live a very happy and fulfilled life.
So you kind of tiptoe between the lines of like being content, but also, seeing how far you could push yourself. Cause it seems kind of like I'm trying to put myself in your shoes. Yeah, if I was in the same orchestra as Diana in whatever city and we were doing fine, yeah, I would probably just be content and stay there. So,
Mm.
given that, uh, how did you kind of toe that line? How did you have that gratitude, but also say like, hey, I'm gonna. How did you decide to keep taking auditions even though you were happy?
Um, well, I think it's just my personality a little bit. Like I can't ever just sit
Mm-hmm.
with anything.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and also I took that, I think the first Piccolo audition that I really did well at was Houston, but far before the other Houston audition that I took. And it was like I got to the semifinal round or something on Piccolo, and I
Mm-hmm.
was like, okay. I mean, it's kind of like getting the taste of that success, and I might be slightly competitive. And then having that and like going, oh, well, maybe I can do this. Maybe it is a possibility. And so then when I did the St. Louis one, it just kind of like was gnawing at me, like, well, if you can, go for it and try. And I definitely don't ever want to live with regrets, which is actually why I ended up taking the Philadelphia audition, which we can also get into. But
Yeah.
because speaking of being happy, I mean, we were all so happy, as you know, there in San Diego. I mean,
Yeah.
just absolutely loved it. But there's just like I can't live my life going, well, Philadelphia Orchestra Piccolo position is open once in my lifetime. And I
Mm-hmm.
was like, of course
Right.
I have to take that. I'm not
Right.
going to get it. I'm not going to win it, but like I have to take it because if I don't, I'll forever be going, well, what would life be like?
Right. You don't want to be thinking, what if?
Yeah,
It's a good mentality to have. So first you used to be uncomfortable on Piccolo and you thought it was evil
mm,
and everything. So I guess one of the major steps to you, besides listening, was you just kind of normalized Piccolo in your mind. Was that probably like a major
totally. Yeah.
breakthrough in playing it?
Yes, normalizing it and treating it like it's its own instrument instead of like it's an evil, stepchild of the flute.
Yeah.
I mean, it really is.
Scary.
And now I prefer, I never thought I would ever say this, but I far prefer playing the piccolo than the flute. And I prefer playing flute rep on the piccolo. I mean,
Oh.
it's like if you're afraid of something, then it's always, a bad
Mm-hmm.
thing. Then you stop becoming afraid of it. And it's like, oh, this actually is pretty great. So
Right. Awesome.
I also kind of wanted to like tip the scale of like the thought of what a piccolo is, like there's I think a lot of even musicians and people think the piccolo and hear the piccolo and they're like, oh god, it's loud, it's high, it's abrasive, it's like,
Yeah. Same
it
with
just, I
percussion.
feel like it can
For sure.
have, yeah, it has a very negative connotation, right? And like you guys just
Yeah.
like hit shit, right?
Yeah.
But like you obviously there's a very musical way to hit shit, which you do fantastically. And
No,
so
thank you.
I feel like it's part of my job to show that the piccolo can be a really beautiful voice.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't just have to be loud and harsh. Sure, it can be. And it is sometimes, but I love it for its vocal qualities and how it can sing and its sweetness. So I wanted other people to hear that too.
Yeah, and I think it's so amazing because like there is that kind of general kind of concept of the piccolo, loud, high, shrill, whatever. But when you do hear someone who's amazing at it, when they like you hear someone play it so delicately or do this amazing decrescendo really high, and it's just beautiful and sounds effortless. It really is the difference between good and great, and it's all the difference. It makes all the difference in the world when you're listening to it.
Yeah, and all it really requires, Eddie, is like taking the time to learn the instrument. Like I think there are plenty of flute players out there that if they were to actually take the time to give, the respect to that instrument that it deserves and give the time learning it, then they would be fantastic too. Like I don't think I have any, I just
Do
think
you
I took the time to learn it.
do you think that the main reason why flute players out there don't take the time is because they really haven't normalized the piccolo as a non-evil instrument, or what do
I
you
mean,
think
I
is the
can't
main
speak
cause?
for anybody else, but sure. I mean, I think that it's just this built-in mentality of the piccolo is annoying to have to play. And I
Mm,
think that there are probably a lot of flute players out there who want, a principal flute job.
right.
That's what they're gunning for. And
Mm-hmm.
to give up on that, I think might be hard for some people. But I wasn't ever married to that. I just didn't really know. I just wanted to play in an orchestra. I'm like, I'll play anything. Put me anywhere, you know?
Right. Right.
So,
Well, I mean, it's a wonderful mentality to have, and it certainly paid off, which is awesome. So having, I guess this kind of segues into my next question, having never formally studied the piccolo, normalizing yourself, having never done any of those things like I mentioned in the intro, like going to Tanglewood or Music Academy or all that stuff that people really tout as the way to become an amazing musician. How did you kind of gain the confidence to keep going? How did you keep your curiosity up and your confidence that you could be good at this or you could make something happen with this?
Well, that word that you use, curiosity, is so vital to, I think, my mindset. They teach kids now like the fixed versus the growth mindset. You got to have the growth mindset. I think I've always had that growth mindset, just not wanting to be stagnant as a person or as a musician. I mean, it's just even just, reading a crap ton of self-help books just to always try and be a better version of myself the same way as a musician. But I think in terms of like learning the piccolo and getting better and growing confidence, for me, because I had one piccolo lesson that was kind of unbelievable with Sarah Jackson, piccolo player of the LA Phil, who's just amazing. An amazing person. Yeah. We clicked, like I adore her, and she spent a lot of time, it was right before the San Diego audition. So I owe her a lot, I think. But that's the only piccolo lesson I've ever had. And she really encouraged me and, to be curious, to experiment a lot and figure things out for myself. And so that was how I kept going, was just this constant in my practice sessions, constant exploration of what worked and what didn't work. And, I think before, kind of when I had this student mentality, it was, this shit's not working. Somebody tell me how to make it work. Like, that's your job as my teacher, right? Tell me, what do I do? I want to make it work. What do I do to make it work?
Not taking full accountability for it not working.
I think my teachers probably told me how to do the shit to make it work. I just, I don't think I was maybe ready to hear what they were saying. But in my practice, in my exploration, in my own space, taking ownership over my own growth and all of the things that my teachers had said to me throughout the years, it all is there. It's all, in the back of your mind running around somewhere. And I think I picked from all of that and then made up some of my own crap. But it was just like a lot of problem solving. So I record ad nauseum in practice. I mean, every little like 2-second snippet I record, listen back right away. It's like just this, I'm a problem solver. I like solutions. And so
just constant feedback loop.
Yes. Constant, not like I'll play a practice session and then listen back and take notes. No, I needed like immediate, like what isn't working? Okay. I'm going to try this. Listen back. Did that work? No. Okay. Try this. Did that work? Yes. Yeah. Okay. I'll do that, 10 times. So I know that will work every time. I mean, just constant, kind of insane problem solving on micro levels.
Right. No, this is incredible. There's so many, this is like what I'm learning by interviewing these people over the past 9 weeks is this is a common thread throughout all my interviews. The people who are really successful took full responsibility of their, shortcomings or things they needed to work on. They experiment like crazy. They kind of treat their practice session as as the way a scientist would treat a laboratory. They go in, they experiment. It's like test, result, test, result, test, result. See what happens. Experiment. Finding your own way. You're your own best teacher. Like all that stuff. It's like this is the common thing out of every interview I've done for anyone who has a really good job.
But the thing is like it's just like with your teachers. Like you can tell these people, anybody, any student, any player, this sort of stuff, but it's like it has to be the right time for it to click for them. I think. And for me, it didn't click until perhaps later in my career. but yeah,
When do
I
you
think it
think
has
that
to,
clicked for
everything.
you? Because you had kind of success at a young age. You know, you didn't do a
Yeah, but
master's
I don't,
degree.
I mean, yeah, right. Okay, so I don't know if you have other plans, but let's go back a little
Let's
bit.
go
So
back.
in high
Do it.
school, I think I was like fine. Like
Mm-hmm.
I was like okay, um, good. I mean, I did all state, but like I auditioned at like 8 or 9 schools maybe for undergrad, and I only got into one. Um,
Okay.
and it was the University of Miami, and it
Mm-hmm.
was like my backup, but I got a full ride there, so at least there was that.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of feel like, so I took my first audition for the Florida Orchestra, and I had no idea, but I was clueless. And I feel like I spent many of my first, I've taken over like 40 or maybe close to 50 auditions
Wow.
um, in my career. So like it just didn't, I feel like the Honolulu win was sort of luck, to be perfectly honest.
Mm.
I think there was a base level of like, I'm competent, but
Mm-hmm.
I think kind of like worlds collided for me to end up in that place.
Right.
Um,
I
and
mean,
then I feel like
that's an element in
Honolulu
any
was
audition.
like, oh,
Sorry.
absolutely.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
like there's always
No,
an
no, no.
element of luck, but
Right. And I think you know,
maxed out.
capitalized on the luck
Okay,
for,
yeah.
yeah,
Nice.
for that Honolulu audition. I don't really think I was ready. Um, and that actually to me was sort of like the summer festivals that I never did, like NRO, Tanglewood. Like I never did any of that stuff, I think, because I wasn't good enough to get into any of them.
Mm.
And so Honolulu was kind of like a summer festival for me. It was like, okay, we're playing with a real professional orchestra. You better
Mm-hmm.
learn your shit fast.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like, as far as it actually all clicking for me, I would say it wouldn't be until after I had Avery. And um, I think I kind of owe it to her,
Oh wow.
honestly. Like the switch kind of flipped for me when I had her. And um, I think it's because of my practice strategy completely changing because I had no time.
Right.
And so this recording and immediately listening back stuff that I'm talking about, I didn't do before I had Avery. I mean, I just had this luxury of time and I wasted it. And I
Mm.
played through things, you know, I didn't
Right.
like,
Yeah. What was your approach before? You just repeat things over
there
and over
wasn't an
again, whatever.
approach. There,
Okay.
yeah, there was no approach. It's like, this stinks. Let me do it again. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
that was better. Let me do it again. I mean, there was no approach. But
Okay.
when I had Avery, it was like she's taking a nap for 20 minutes. So I have 20 minutes. What am I going to figure out in that 20 minutes? And set a goal. And it was like my whole method of taking auditions was born from having a child,
Yeah.
basically, and having no time.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
now
So
I tell
let's
my
get into
students
that.
not, yeah.
Well, I mean, go ahead, finish that sentence, but let's get into that having no time.
Well, I now talk to my students about not practicing so much. Like, I do not think it's necessary to practice 6 hours, 4 hours, 3 hours a day. I just think if you're doing that, then you're missing the point and
Mm-hmm.
um, I, I don't know. I think it can almost be more damaging to do that than productive. And so I talk to my students about this like 20-minute, you know, hyper focused,
Mm-hmm.
hyper thoughtful sort of practice in 20-minute stints, and then spend, you know, another 20 minutes being completely unfocused or
Mm.
staring at a wall or doing laundry or something, and then come back
Yeah.
and hyper focus, goal oriented for another 20 minutes and really, really no more than that.
Okay. That's amazing. I want to plant a flag in there really quick because I want to get back to that. But that, yeah, it's very similar to Jason Haheim, who's the timpanist of the Metropolitan Opera. He actually had a job in a nanotech lab before he won the timpani job. He's a
Oh my
lifelong
gosh.
musician, but he was like a nanotech scientist. But his thing is basically if you're really truly practicing deliberately, you can't possibly practice for more than 3 or 5 hours in a day. Like if you're really focused, like it's just not possible to maintain pure focus for that long. So I'd love to get into that because I think, you know, I definitely struggle with this, and I'm sure a lot of people struggle with this. Conceptually, you know, 20 minutes of very focused work sounds wonderful and doable, and I like to think that I'm capable of that, but now, like when I experiment with that, when I set a timer for 20 minutes, I'm like, okay, intense focus, let's practice. inevitably find myself kind of like when I'm reading a book, like I'll practice and then I'll be like, oh, I've been thinking about something else entirely this entire time. How do you approach that? Like, how do you focus so well in that 20 minutes?
Um, well, I think it again was born from the desperation of I don't have another 20 minutes in the day. Like it's
Mm-hmm.
not, and when you're preparing for auditions, it's very, you have a goal, you have this audition that you're a specific thing that you're preparing for. So I think that helps to
Mm-hmm.
have something that you are preparing for, as opposed to just like, oh, I'm going to work on, articulation today or
Right.
whatever. So to have like a real clear big goal, but then also small goals. I mean, for me, I don't set a timer. Like I don't do that in terms of the 20 minutes. I
Okay.
set goals that should take about 20 minutes. So, um, because I think that if I were to set a timer, I probably feel similarly where I would just kind of be like, okay, when's the timer going off? Da, da,
Mm-hmm.
da,
Mm-hmm.
and play stuff. But, um, I don't set a timer. It's more just like now I know what I can do in those 20 minutes and it's one sort of focus. So like when I'm preparing for auditions, I do this whole schedule, where at the beginning part of my schedule, I break down each day has its own excerpt and I do what I call relearning the excerpt. So like,
Mm-hmm.
we all learn the same excerpts for like they keep showing up on audition lists. Right. And so I think we start to believe that we know the excerpts.
Mm-hmm.
And so our level of prep for each audition starts from a place of like, okay, well, I know this, so I'll just like clean it up a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So I force myself to ignore that mentality and to start as though I don't know the excerpt, even if I do, even if I've played it a million times, and relearn it
Yeah.
like fresh eyes. Like I've never played this before.
Beginner's
So
mind. Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And take that approach every single time that I learn the excerpt. So like, um, also paying attention to every little detail as you're playing will, illuminate so much wrong. It's an infuriating process,
Mm-hmm.
to record yourself and then listen back right away. So in that
Yeah.
20 minutes, I'll record one measure and I'll listen back to what do I have intention in that measure?
Mm-hmm.
Is it a bigger phrase or is it a small phrase? What is my articulation like? What am I doing dynamically? What's my intonation? How am I rhythmically? Like there's so much to explore in just one bar.
Right.
Um, I do think that the recording small snippets though helps with the focus too, because it's not just playing for 20 minutes. It's
Right.
like serious problem solving, um,
You're just kind of
as you
solving little
record and listen back.
puzzles one after another.
Yeah, I love me some puzzles.
Yeah, you do. Yeah. By the way, thank you for that puzzle you sent us at Christmas. It was a
Yes.
wonderful little gift. Uh, yeah. Okay. So
Yeah.
you're breaking it down in little chunks. What about patience? Like patience with yourself when you're recording that one measure and you hear a million things. Like, how do you kind of parse that out and also be, gentle with yourself?
Yeah, I'm not great at showing myself grace
Mm,
and
okay.
gentleness. But I think just taking things one at a time. I mean, it sounds so simple and like obvious,
Hmm.
um, so much harder to do in the moment, but truly tackling one thing at a time. I kept practice journals and I'll write down everything that I hear.
Hmm.
And then I start with the first one and begin to tackle that one. And then the next 20-minute session, I'll tackle the next one.
Mm,
And it's not just like making it better. It's like, what am I actually doing physically to make that work?
mm,
Right. So let's say my articulation is shit when I listen to it the first time. Okay. So I record, listen, go back to record again, and I change something that I'm doing with my articulation physically, and then
hmm.
listen. When it works, I'm like memorizing what was it that I did that made it work, and then go back and record that a few more times to make sure I was right,
Yeah.
and then record that in my practice journal. So it's like really OCD.
No, it's
Um,
great though.
what
It's like
what I
a
do. I
really
don't
good
think it's
body
for
awareness.
everyone, but I will also say that there are those people who don't. I think, well, clearly, who don't need to do all this stuff. Like people who
I'm not
go
so
and
sure
win.
about that. Well, yeah, I mean, there are those outliers, but I think this is good for 98% of people. It's like, try and figure out how you can make this work for you. This is a kind of sure way to improve over time and become really good at what you're doing. I mean, I'm just seeing this proof over and over again, example after example of musicians across all instruments having success with this kind of method, and that's
Yeah.
amazing to witness, amazing to see.
Yeah, I mean, I think it needs to be more detailed than most people want to get or realize that it needs to get. And
Mm-hmm.
I, I've had some people ask me about like the roboticness of auditions and does it have to be perfect? And the idea is not, for me, all of this sort of practice is about getting consistency, which is what I think is the most important thing when you're
Mm-hmm.
taking a slew of auditions. It's how can you, because you're spending, thousands of dollars to go and take auditions at places. I mean, it's
Yeah.
crazy. So, um, how can you be sure that you're going to play this excerpt at the top of your game, and there's so much that goes into that, of course, in the
Right.
2 minutes that you're on stage doing it.
Yeah.
But all of this detailed practice is in an effort to make sure that you know how to get that result every time.
Yeah. It
Like
seems
what
like
physically are you doing to get that?
right. And it seems like when you have that down, when that's just kind of second nature to you, then you kind of have this freedom to really put like musical expression or an emotional character behind it in the
So
moment.
that's the other side of it. Yeah, is that I'm also a proponent of making your musical choices like not at the time of audition, but really choosing like where are you going to take risks in an excerpt, where are you going to get impossibly saw, even if it doesn't pan out every time. I
Mm-hmm.
think there is an element of taking risks musically in audition, but I feel like having a plan allows you then to be free in an audition because you
Mm-hmm.
have that plan. So I
Yeah.
think it can feel like it's robotic. Like if I have a plan, this is what I'm going to do musically every time. But then, to let that go in an audition. And for me, it actually gives me the freedom because I know I have a plan
Yeah.
to express myself in an audition comfortably without being like, I don't know if this is going to work. I don't know no, like I know that my plan is going to work. And should I decide to deviate from that a bit, like
Yeah.
good times,
Right.
but I like having a plan.
Yeah, yeah. I'm
So
looking in the comments. Chris Still, the second trumpet player in the LA Phil, he says, "Preach." That's his whole thing. That the course that I just finished taking, the Audition Accelerator. It's a 16-week course that he puts on. There's so much of what you're talking about in it, and it's great to see examples of it working out. And not that I ever doubted you, Chris. I always thought it was great, but it's great to have this concrete evidence that it works. If anyone has any questions at any time, please ask them. We'll get to them, but I'll just really quickly go over some comments. Chelsea K. Anderson, Erica Peel is our queen.
aw, Chelsea.
Bryce Leafman, good to have you back, man. Deborah Peel, is that your mother?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, she says cheers.
Aw, yay.
Chris James comment, he said never. I think that was something you said earlier, but Chris James, good to see you. Up in Vancouver, I believe, right? Is he?
Yeah, actually, James, Chris was with me in the finals of the Philly audition.
Oh, okay. Awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
he's a rock star in his own right. I remember
yeah,
him.
he is. He's a
And
beast.
Diana and
Yep.
him were in the Youth Orchestra of Canada together, and he was like 16 or something.
Wow.
Tara Rosansky. Do you know Tara
Yep.
Rosansky? She said, "Yeah, the babe, loving that
Yep.
sweater, Erica." She says,
Oh, thanks. She told me to wear a turtleneck so I look smarter. But
"You
you've been
look
having
great."
like incredibly intelligent guests on, and I just feel like I pale in comparison.
That's why you're here. So, because you're
They're
one of
so
my
smart.
incredibly intelligent guests. I mean, no, this
I
is
don't
gold.
know.
What you're saying is pure gold. This is great. This is so great for people to hear who are kind of struggling. I was definitely where you were where when I was younger. It's like, yeah, tell me how to fix this. I don't know how to fix this. You tell me how to fix this. I'll do whatever you say. And
Yeah.
I really wasn't. I was kind of the same. I didn't take ownership until I was like in my mid 20s. That's when I finally was like, oh, this is like my responsibility. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's
'Cause
see.
we all have
Ethan
that
Lynchwartz.
light bulb moment.
Yeah.
Oh, hi, Ethan.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing your story. Chris Still, this is amazing. Yeah. So many great comments, so much good feedback.
Aw.
Let's see.
I will say,
These are,
oh, sorry, go ahead. You
no, go
finish up
ahead.
with your.
Oh, okay. These are great conversations from Brandon Shantz. These are great conversations, different means to get to an end for different people, but consistent hard work and recognizing your own weaknesses is the common thread. Yeah, for sure. Chris Still, good to know
Yeah,
I'm
and
not a
actually,
lunatic. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm just like,
no, I wanted to say something on that. The consistent hard work is like,
mm-hmm,
um, I feel like I've struggled a little bit with like imposter syndrome.
mm,
And part of the reason I've thought about recently why I've struggled with that is because I feel like I've never worked like hard in the sense that I think of working really hard.
like
And I
bleeding
feel like
fingers and
things,
lips and
well, yeah, or like eight
yeah,
hours a day of practicing. Like that
yeah.
to me is working hard. And like that does not sound appealing to me in any way and never has. And I think that
Yeah.
that's kind of why I was sort of shitty until I figured it out because like I wouldn't practice that long every day
Mm-hmm.
because I just never wanted to. It wasn't appealing to me.
Yeah.
And so I wasn't working hard. And then when I figured it out, I still don't think I work hard. I just think I work smart. You know, I
Yeah.
work intelligently when I practice. And
Yeah.
so I feel oftentimes like I didn't work hard enough to get where I am.
Yeah.
But I think I've worked intelligently to get where I am. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
You
So
were just
it's
you were just more efficient. You hacked it. Hacks are, it's the way to do it.
totally, man.
Yeah.
Audition hacking. Yeah,
Audition hacking.
that's it.
Peter Schluer has a question. Erica, do you have any comments on mental practice? Love what you said so far. So that's also been a very common thread is the concept of mental practice. So yeah, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, totally. So sorry, I just dropped one of Jason's oboe things.
Oh, uh-oh.
Not good.
Sorry, Jason.
Yes. So I mean, I can touch on a couple things with the mental practice, which is huge, and there's so much involved in that. So like, in terms of pre-audition mental practice, I did a lot of visualization. So like, it'd be great if you knew what the hall looked like, but if I didn't know what it looked like, I would do lots of just quiet visualization, imagining every part of the process, like walking into the hall, walking into the warm-up room, the group warm-up room, and then being taken to the personal warm-up room, having a plan of what you'll do in those places, imagining how it feels, and imagining the best possibility of how it feels, and doing that many, many times, kind of like manifesting your shit, and then imagining walking on stage, having a proctor, imagining how it's going to feel to take your first breath before you play your first note, like that kind of intense, again, OCD visualization, I think was really helpful for me to feel confident, like I already had done it before, if that makes sense, and I did it really well because in my visualizations I'm kicking ass. So there's that, and then I have a practice in the actual audition. Actually, I've now turned into what I do when I'm playing in the orchestra too. And I call them mantras, and they change throughout my preparation. I have a very detailed way of preparing for auditions that, like, I have my calendar set out, and like I said earlier, every excerpt gets every day, or every excerpt gets a day of its own. And then after I do all of that, I do a few excerpts on a day and then leave the week before the audition for mocks or run throughs. And so I'm planning these mantras through that entire process, but they can change all the way until the audition, really, the audition day. And they are like physical and or mental cues that will get me to play the excerpt as consistently as possible every time. So it could be something like move your air, or slow fingers, or support from the ground, and then like something more abstract or character driven, like fluid, aggressive, floating, something like that. And I write them before my excerpt. So like 2 or 3 things. And before I play the excerpt, I kind of do a short meditation on those things, like really, really focusing and internalizing physically all of those things. And then as it inevitably happens, as I work my way through the excerpt, I start like you were talking about during your practice, like I just start thinking about the things like, oh, what was that sound in the hall? And I wonder what they're thinking. And when I catch myself doing that, I come back to the mantras and, you know, go back to meditating on those as I'm playing. And I
Do
practice
you have
doing
a
that.
meditation practice? Like, have you practiced mindfulness or anything like that in order to, or is this all kind of independent on your own?
It's all independent. There's nothing
Wow.
like, I mean,
You're
I practice
natural.
it, but it's not,
Yeah.
well, well, if you really actually think about what it is, you know, it's guiding your mind.
Yeah.
And I think that that can come
Awareness.
naturally to all of us.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, so these mantras that I call them, I just practice them throughout the entire preparation for an audition. So it's not like, okay, I'm doing it today when it comes to the audition. I think it takes practice to really internalize those things before you play, recognize when you're veering from them while you're playing the excerpt and going back to them. So that's a part of my practice for auditions as well, are these mantras that I call them.
Yeah.
Because I think if you want consistency, then you have to practice consistency, right?
Yeah.
So
No,
it's
100%.
practicing that. Yeah.
Yeah. Chris, he says, yes, this is the biggest lesson here. Erica is my spirit animal. Sonia,
Aww.
Sonia Cruchet. Yes, work smart, not hard. Love it. How is it with U.S.
Yeah.
orchestras after an audition? Do they always appoint? No, not always. There's a lot of no hires, Sonia.
Yeah.
And it's amazing when someone does get hired, like Erica. Diana
Totally.
Morgan, Jason, she's throwing your oboe around. You okay, bud? Yeah. We'll find
It's just
out.
the staple, I think they call it.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. All right. Cindy Henderson Dean, mental practice and awesome aspect. Yes. And Susan Morgan, a couple of Canadians hanging on your every word. This is great.
Aw.
Okay. So it's clear to me, at least, that you are somewhat of a superhero. Like in my mind, you're kind of like a superhero. And so I kind of want to get vulnerable a little bit. I know you and I have talked about this the times we hang out in San Diego. Let's talk about anxiety, struggling with
Yeah.
anxiety, overcoming anxiety, because I know that is something that people either are open about or they're lying about. So let's hear your take.
I'm 1,000% open about it. And I get nervous as all get out. I mean, I still do. I can remember very specific moments in orchestra too, where I've had borderline panic attacks, like sitting in my chair.
Wow.
I've always thought that like scientists should like sit down and study us and put, you know, shit on
Yeah.
us while we have like a solo coming up and study what, because it's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
The mind games that we play with ourselves. And I still get incredibly nervous for things. I think I'm getting better at it because I realize that a lot of what makes me so nervous and anxiety ridden are the lies that I tell myself about like, you know, they're going to find out that you're actually not that good. And, you know, can you actually do this because you screwed it up earlier? Or anxiety for me is that kind of debilitating anxiety is directly related to a lack of confidence, which I totally struggle with. So, you know, my dad, who was also a professional musician, would say that, you know, just over prepare, and then you won't feel so nervous. I don't know if that's always the case to the full extent, but I do think that when I am over prepared, I am less panicky, if that makes sense. Like still nervous, but less panicked. I think we have to embrace the sense, right? Yeah. Which is, I mean, it's so easy to say, and so much less easy to actually put into practice. But
right.
Yeah, I think that confidence plays a huge role in feeling not panicked, but of course we're going to be nervous because you want to do well, right? So I'm usually mostly nervous for my colleagues, and not so much. I mean, if it's like a retirement home or something, I'm just like sharing the joy of music, right? And that's like what we're supposed to be doing. But I think we lose that sometimes. So I actually say to myself when I'm in those panicky moments now, like I'm not a brain surgeon or a heart surgeon. Like if I miss a note or miss something, or, whatever happens that I'm terrified of, nobody's going to die. Right? It's music. Like it's
you.
Okay. If something, right.
Yeah.
Just me internally.
Yeah.
Later on. But no, even me, like, nobody's going to actually die, and I won't even get fired. Even better. Once you have tenure, it's like your colleagues know that they chose you to be in the orchestra. They know you, they know you're playing, and we're all human. And like, it helps me just to come back to these places of reality. Like, I'm not sitting there, thank God, performing surgery on someone that could potentially die. I mean, we're just trying to, like, move people with music. It's not, it's not life or death. And that sort of, like, perspective on what we're doing helps me a lot to take down the panic. Like, why are you freaking out so much? Like, it's fine. If this note is slightly out of tune, most people probably won't even notice, so.
Yeah, that's true so much of the time.
Perspective is really important for me with the anxiety of things, but that's helped more lately, I would say.
So just kind of taking a step back a little bit. Sorry.
Seeing the big picture. No. But in terms of auditions and that kind of anxiety, that is a very different anxiety, because it's like a direct judgment, right? I mean, it's different from live performance, because you're not just there to move people. People are judging you. I mean, it's a fact, right? They're judging your playing. So it's sort of a different level of anxiety. For me, I, again, trust my plan. I trust my preparation. And I recall going into most of my latest auditions, like, breathing in the hall, looking at the space, and just thinking, like, how lucky am I to be standing on this stage? Whether or not I ever get to play with this orchestra, like, how cool is it that I can play soloistically on this stage by myself right now?
Yeah.
Don't let this moment go by without appreciating it, and have fun. And it's so, like, cliche, like, have fun playing an audition. It's like, but I think we have to trick ourselves sometimes and convince ourselves of things like, you're a badass. And, like, I don't actually think I'm a badass. I truly don't. But sometimes I have to convince myself that I am just to get through, like, one note.
We all think you're a badass for sure, but you're doing a very good job of convincing yourself and all of us. Diana posted a YouTube link. If you want to hear this angel, link above. Everyone click that link after this interview and watch that. Cindy Henderson Dean, nerves to help rather than hinder. A good point. Yes. Brandon Shantz, I've found in light of current events, perspective is huge in controlling the nerves. Good advice on coming back to reality. Why are we all such head cases?
Thanks.
Yeah, I mean, well, why are we all such head cases? Because we're trained to be that way. I mean, these are learned behaviors. I truly believe that. Like, the perfection, like the old kind of modality of teaching is and has been about technical perfection. And I really feel, I mentioned this last week, you've really kind of reached kind of a zero sum on how technically perfect you can play something, and we found that it's boring when someone plays that way. So
totally.
Bring the joy
and
back
I
into it.
just to bolster that idea, I have never played a perfect audition ever.
This is
and
important.
All of my Philadelphia orchestra rounds had mistakes and blunders in it that I thought after the end of every round they could easily cut me for that. Like, I would get it. That's understandable for them to cut me for that. Having been now on the other side of the screen a few times for Philly orchestra auditions, I can say with even more certainty that it's not about somebody playing a perfect round. You can tell if it's an issue in somebody's playing, if it's a weakness that is showing itself through and through. You can tell if it's that, or if somebody has just miffed something and is human.
Right. Or they took a risk
quite obvious,
and it didn't quite work out. But you appreciate the risk.
Right. And that, exactly. Totally. The other side of the screen appreciates the risk. Now, of course, things have to be basically in line and, but yes, the risk taking, I think, generally wins over all else. So
yeah, I agree 100%. I guess last question, how are you using this time, this kind of sheltering in place indefinitely? How are you using it?
I don't know, man. I don't really know how I'm using it. I think I started out with, when it first happened, like, okay, I have to figure out how to be productive and kind of went out with a bang, trying to do a number of different things. I also felt like I teach at Peabody, I teach Piccolo at Peabody, and I felt an immense responsibility to the students there, knowing that they weren't going to receive as quality of an education just because of the circumstances. And so I spent a lot of my first couple of weeks in quarantine trying to figure out how to make sure that their experience was just as good, if not better, in this situation than being live. But I think I've kind of had this mentality of like, one day I will be insanely productive, and then the next day I give myself the grace to like stare at a wall for the entire day. And so there are days when I can really get in, like go down the rabbit hole of productivity, and then other days where I will do pretty much nothing and allow myself to do that and be okay with doing that. I try and accomplish like one thing a day, even if it's just like an email or, just trying to like take care of one thing on my to-do list. But I think for me throughout this strange time, it's just having purpose, no matter what that is, whether it's musically or not. Having something that's fulfilling me and that's giving me purpose is pulling me through the bizarreness of not connecting with people. And it's so strange.
Yeah, it is.
But that, I don't know if that's a good
no,
answer of how I'm dealing
that is
with
a good
it.
answer.
I don't know if I think we all kind of are dealing with it in different and strange ways, but I do think it's important to emphasize that if you aren't doing anything, that's okay.
Yeah, like, that is okay. 100%.
Yeah.
Don't beat yourself
completely
up.
unprecedented.
This is a weird time. It is a different era of human history that we are in.
I'm also spending it doing a lot, or trying to figure out how to do this virtual performing with people. So Amanda Harburg, who's a composer who I adore and a dear friend, and she wrote a Piccolo sonata, and she's writing other amazing things, wrote flute pieces. She's also an incredible pianist, and so she's sending me like piano parts to things, and then I'm you having to fit in with somebody else. It's like learning the piece on a whole other level, I think. And learning how, when I'm playing with her video, it's like, well, where's she taking time? Where's she moving? Where's this happening? And it's like a whole other way of learning the music that I'm actually finding really thrilling.
That's awesome. Silver
so
lining.
Yeah, I'm enjoying doing that. Listen, we have to.
Gotta find it. Chris Still, again, how they react to the mistake. I think he's talking about how the musician reacts to the mistake they make in an audition, which is, yes, crucial. Keep going.
Right. Like that's important. And also that goes back to the mantras, like your plan. You screw something up and go back to your mantras. Keep focused in the moment.
Kat Grant, this is all wonderful. What role does self-care play in your detailed audition prep process? Books you read, exercise routines, diet, etc. What keeps you sane and healthy as you prepare?
Yeah, that's actually a really good question. And I know I've, heard from a lot of people who have like a whole, like they run every day and they stop drinking coffee and they stop drinking alcohol. I actually prefer to keep my life as normal as possible. Like how I would live my life. I don't do anything extra, like in terms of my diet or my exercise. Like I live my life. And then my practice is spent doing this detailed work, but that's just my practice. I guess it's also like a mentality of, is this everything to me? And it's not, and it never really has been. And I think that's been beneficial to me, where I have said and continue to say, I don't know if everybody believes me, but like there are like 5 other things that I could see myself doing in my life career wise. I know how incredibly lucky I am to play with this insane orchestra, and I freaking love it. But should something happen and shit happens where that wasn't possible anymore, it's not everything, like my family is important to me. The connections I have with people is probably the most important thing in my life. And so I think separating, like living my life from auditions and from my career, is important and helps me in auditions. So I don't like go changing all of my normal habits. I live my life as I normally do. And then I input really good audition preparation, if that makes sense.
Totally. And I think it's better. I never understood the people who are like, I'm going to stop drinking coffee or I'm going to stop drinking alcohol. If it's like something that's been part of your life, that means you have to have this weird recovery period where you're going through
Yeah, and your
withdrawal. And that
body's gonna be like, what?
that never made sense to me.
Right.
But good. I'm glad
Yep.
someone agrees. Jason
Yeah,
Sudduth,
totally. Man.
your husband, he missed you dropping the thing, but he says he prefers Ehorn anyway.
That's true.
Sonia Cruchet, I always thought an audition was the most nerve-wracking thing. Now I think being on the panel is worse. Sonia, I think, I think you just kind of got to normalize it, just like Erica normalized the Piccolo. And if you want to check out my interview from last week with Bryce Leafman, the concept of auditioning is scary until you normalize it, until it's not a scary thing anymore. It is kind of
Yeah, and
a
everybody,
choice.
if you didn't hear Bryce's thing last week, you should go back and watch it because it's kind of mind blowing. Like he's so cerebral about the way he goes about everything, yet everything that he said was like the epigenetic stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I went back through some of my audition journals, and like there was one thing that said, "You are what you think," or you do what you believe, or like these kind of things. Like I'm not nearly as smart as Bryce is, and I definitely don't know what the hell epigenetics are, but I know that shit works. Like whatever you're telling yourself, if you're telling yourself that you can't do it over and over again, then that's what you're manifesting,
Or that it's scary.
It's pretty powerful.
Or,
Right.
Yeah. Start normalizing it. Brandon Shantz, military fife and drum collaboration. Brandon is the percussionist in the Naval Academy Band. Yeah, anytime, Brandon. And either Erica or
Totally.
Diana, I think, would be happy. Peter Schlur, thank you, Erica and Eddie. Amazing thread of deliberation and practice throughout the interviews. Thank you, Peter. Appreciate it. Diana Morgan, Erica's book title, Silver Linings. Diana loves wordplay.
Oh, I love it.
Perfect.
Geniuses.
Chelsea K. Anderson, Erica's completely revamped my practice and preparations for auditions when they happen again because of this bizarre time. She is an incredible teacher and was so empathetic to our situation at Peabody. We are grateful to her and her dedication to us. I'm so thankful. That's just a testament to how amazing you are.
That's so sweet. I actually she and I just had a lesson today, and we talked about this very thing of like, I offered her this exercise to get her sound the best it could be during an excerpt, and she sent me a practice video where she had played the entire excerpt with this exercise. And today we talked about just doing like 2 bars of that exercise to memorize that feeling, and then go back and play it normally. And then instead of doing again, it's like, if you do the entire thing all the way through, 2-minute long thing, you're going to check out. So do a short portion of it, and it just keeps coming back throughout everything.
I wish you had stock because I would buy it. I feel like there's going to be a bunch of audition winners coming out of the Peabody Conservatory pretty soon when auditions start up again. Well, great. Well, Erica, thank you so much for being here. That was incredible. It was so insightful. I don't know why you keep saying that you're not as smart as these other guests. You are brilliant. It is amazing to hear what you have to say. You totally are. You figured it out on your own even, which is more amazing. So, thank you so much for being here. That was so enlightening for me, and I think just a breath of fresh air for everybody who was listening.
Thanks, Eddie.
Yeah, of course. Just stick around.
It was super fun.
Good. Yeah, hope to have you back again. I'll catch up with you in a second, so just stick around really quick, okay?
Okay.
All right. Thank you all so much for tuning into that episode. Man, that was so great, wasn't it? I think I'm going to have to watch it one a couple times. There's so many nuggets, so many wonderful golden nuggets in there. And we're just seeing that theme of deliberate practice, experimentation, approaching it kind of like a laboratory, living your life, not killing yourself, being kind to yourself. I mean, these are the new traits of people who we're seeing winning all these jobs. You don't have to kill yourself in the practice room. You don't have to neglect your obligations. You don't have to neglect your family, your spouse, your girlfriend, your boyfriend. You can do it without all that torture. You just have to do it the smart way. Record yourself, like everyone says, believe, thoughts become beliefs, become reality. Keep doing that. And on that, next week's episode is going to be great. It's more geared towards percussionists, but I think anyone can benefit from it. I am actually, and I'm going to give credit where credit is due. This is actually an idea that my former guest, Brandon Shantz, gave to me. I'm going to have a small panel of non-percussionists who have sat on the committee for a percussion audition next week. I'm going to have Daniel Smith, who is associate principal bass in the San Francisco Symphony, who sat on Bryce Leafman's audition just a few months ago. I'm going to have Elise Henry, who was the second flutist in the LA Phil, who sat on the committee for the principal percussion audition that Matt Howard won in 2016. And I'm going to have Nir Cabaretti, who was the music director of the Santa Barbara Symphony, who was on my committee when I auditioned. And also he was on the committee for the principal percussion spot in the other orchestra he conducts in Florida. So that is going to be an incredibly informative interview panel. I'm sure there's going to be tons of questions from the audience. Have your questions ready to go. I'm hoping to kind of demystify what's happening on the other side of the curtain for everyone. Like I said, it's kind of geared towards percussionists, but I think anyone can find value in it. So I hope to see you back here next week, same time, 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern. Until then, be safe and bye for now.